Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It's Thursday, August the 23rd, as we come up to 6 o'clock Eastern Time, which is lunchtime in the Hawaiian Islands, as Hurricane Lane is inching its way closer and closer to the island chain. And we're sort of on, I guess, meteorological tender hooks and trying to figure out how far north is it going to get. Does it hook a bit to the right and get very close to the big island of Hawaii, or does it get weaker faster and winds up turning to the west a bit faster? These are all big questions here. Right now, the biggest issue has been the rainfall, because we have seen some flash flooding that has occurred on the big island of Hawaii and on a few of the neighboring islands. And we're going to take a look at the radars. Again, as always, from the get-go, if you're watching from Hawaii, like Cato in Hawaii on our chat board is, welcome to you, and welcome to those of you watching us from Hawaii. Aloha. And please be advised that if you're watching this after the live stream is done on a replay, the radar is dated and the data might be dated. So be sure, whether you're watching now or watching later, you want to go to the Central Pacific Hurricane Center's website to get all the latest official information, and also the National Weather Service forecast from Hawaii at their office. You can get to that by both those sites, by going to weather.gov. And these are the sites that you should use as far as making decisions are concerned. And of course, consult your local government officials regarding what you need to do during the storm. It's past preparation time at this point, but if you have any additional information that you need, those are your go-to sources. Now, we're going to take a look at Lane, which since yesterday, when we had it still looking as a rather impressive buzzsaw in terms of the presentation on the satellite, it has become a bit more distorted, and the wind shear is taking its toll. If you look very closely, it might be a little hard to see, but there is a spot there in the middle of the picture where it's kind of like a grayish circle. That is the eye. So it's becoming less and less distinct. And also, what's happening is that the hurricane's getting basically elongated or stretched out to some degree. It's looking more oriented. Instead of having that circular look to it, it's looking more stretched out north-south. And this is a result of the wind shear, the stronger winds in the upper atmosphere, that wind shear environment that the hurricane is moving into. Hurricanes do not like wind shear. Strong upper air winds distort the circulation. They gradually rip the tops of the thunderstorms off. Gradually, they take apart the circulation, and the storm weakens. So we're going to see, based on what we're seeing now and what we're seeing on weather models, that shear actually is going to continue to increase over the next 48 hours. So that could accelerate the weakening. And this is important because while the hurricane maintains its strength, it's going to be responding in terms of its movement. It's going to be responding to winds higher up in the atmosphere, which are going to want to take this more toward the north, or according to some models, even turn it to the northeast for a brief time. But if it weakens fast, it'll respond to the low-level steering winds, which are more east to west, and it would create that hook to the right. At the moment, I would argue against a landfall on the islands, but we can't completely rule it out because of the fact that the toughest part of the forecast is figuring out the speed of the weakening, and that is key. The circulation will also be interacting with the terrain. The core of the hurricane remains offshore, but once the circulation really starts to interact with the mountainous terrain of the Hawaiian Islands, that's going to distort the circulation even further, and perhaps could create a faster weakening trend. I want to I'm going to bring up the water vapor view of this. And you can see the shear what's going on. If you look at the clouds that are in the lower left corner, you see how they're moving from west to east. That is those are the strong upper air winds. And actually, if you go to the from the lower left, now go to the upper left, you can also see clouds there blowing off away to the northeast. And that, again, is the shear. In fact, that brighter white cloud top that shows up, that comes out, emerges from that grayish area, those are the strong upper air winds that are going to continue to distort and weaken Lane. And in fact, on the water vapor imagery, the center is evident until the last couple of frames, and it starts to really fill in there and almost disappear. So I think the weakening trend is definitely at hand, and perhaps on the next advisory we'll see this down to a Category 2 hurricane rather than a Category 3 hurricane than where it is now, top winds at 130 miles an hour at a 4. So we'll see 6 hours from now when the 11 o'clock, 5 hours from now when the 11 o'clock advisory comes out. Now, the biggest issue so far has been the bands of rain that are going on to the north. And I've got a couple of radar views here that we could look at. This is as of 6:06 Eastern time, so as of noon Hawaii time. And notice we've got bands coming into the Big Island. There's heavy rains going on across the Big Island. The southern part of it in particular, not so much in the north yet from this latest band, and the boxed area telling us that we have a flash flood warning up. And that warning has been up for quite a while. There are going to be some very astounding rainfall amounts that are going to occur out of this because of the mountainous terrain and the incredibly rich tropical moisture that's getting involved. You're going to see some 20-inch, 30-inch rain amounts. Would not at all shock me, particularly because of the fact that you're dealing with something that is moving so slowly. Again, if you are watching, just a reminder, it's 6:06, so if you're watching 6:06 Eastern, 12:06 Hawaii time, so if you're watching this later, it's dated, so you want to go to your local National Weather Service office, and you can get to that by weather.gov and check out the latest radars and any changes to watches and warnings. We're going to moving the radar along. This is at Kahala radar further to the west, and you can see a ton of rain that's actually going on to the north and east of the Big Island. And these tight radar views, by the way, don't always pick out exactly where everything is happening. So you'll notice that on this, on the last view, we didn't see much rain showing up on the northwestern side of the island, but this radar view is actually picking up rain bands there, and we've got some heavy rains as you go north and east toward Maui County. And I'll jump to one other radar of the Hawaiian Islands. We're going even further west, so now we're headed toward Honolulu and beyond, and there's a lot of heavy rain that is going on there. Rain, I really think, is going to wind up being the biggest issue here. And then finally, as we go out to the western islands and Kauai, you're on the edge of the rain. You're starting to get into some of the bands, but you're not quite yet into the steady, heavier bands that are to your southwest, but they will be coming in short order. Now, as far as the Hurricane Center's forecast is concerned, this, by the way, is the interactive National Hurricane Center, Central Pacific Hurricane Center forecast. It's the map that I usually show, but this is the interactive version. I thought it would look a bit better so we can get tight. The forecast track in the black line, that is about 100 or so miles to the west of the Big Island, and there's that turn to the right. We hold hurricane status on for a little while longer, and then after that, we major hurricane status for a little while longer, and then weaken it to less than major status by Thursday. You can see these are the reasonable times, by the way, with regards to the arrival of gales. So you're starting to see the gales that are going to be forecast to spread across the island during the day on Friday. Winds may not have exactly picked up yet in many areas, although it is gusty along the coast for sure. But you're likely to see the winds pick up even further as the hurricane gets closer and closer to the land areas. But the uncertainty area in the bluish line, you see it there, touching some of the islands. They keep it away from the big island, but we still do have some models, including the GFS, that want to take this over the big island of Hawaii. Can't rule anything out here, folks. It's just too tenuous a situation. The speed of the weakening, I think, is going to be key. And again, more of this you can find at the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, CPHC. And here, these are the hurricane track models that the forecasters use. Notice the clustering that occurs as they move northward or even briefly northeastward, and then that hook to the left and out as the system weakens and starts to respond to those easterly trade winds. Some of these models take it perilously, very, very close to some of the islands. And I think the Hurricane Center is rightfully cautious, and they express that caution in their discussion. This is a very, very tough forecast, and I can just kind of illustrate what's happening. I'm not actually out there making the forecast. By the way, just before we get to weather back on the mainland and here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, which is what I focus on, I just want to show you the latest GFS and its track. I'm looking at this for the first time because the new GFS model comes out right at the time that we do these live streams. And let me just make this a little bit bigger for you. As the hurricane nears, this is for 8 o'clock tonight, and there's the GFS still wanting to take it northeast before it hooks it back to the west-southwest, and you see it here. I also want to just show you, I'm going to bring up a sounding as we look at the conditions in the upper atmosphere, and these barbs that you see here are the winds. The flags are 50-knot winds. I took a measure there, a sounding of a reading of the atmosphere, and this is from the ground down at below 1,000 millibars, and then going all the way up to the top of the atmosphere. And one of the things this is useful for is if you want to see where the wind shear is. And if you look here, now the winds down near the bottom, of course, with that low-level circulation, you've got 50, 60, 70 knot winds, and that's understandable. In a hurricane, in a warm core system that is well developed, you see winds actually getting lighter the higher up in the atmosphere you go. And you actually do see that. You go from these 50 knot barbs, and they're a little tough to see here. Let me see if I can get this a little bigger for you. Just hang in there. I'll try to make them a little bit bigger. Okay. All right, there you go. So there are your surface winds, and they're strong. But as we go up into the atmosphere, we go up to the 500 millibar level at about 18,000 feet. You notice that the winds are still there at like 20, 25, 30 knots. This is the wind shear we're talking about. And that is problematic, that the winds are increasing after a certain height. They decrease and then they increase again. That's what we're talking about with respect to the stronger winds in the upper atmosphere. This is what distorts the circulation of the hurricane. This is what winds up eventually causing it to weaken. So just to wrap up the lane story here, we are still watching this kind of hour by hour, waiting to see what kind of surprises we're going to get with the track. Is it going to get that hook to the right and then turn left, or is it just going to keep move north and then hook to the left with the making a landfall? Right now, the biggest threat seems to be the heavy rain, but we can't, you can't rule out that this system is going to try and make, a run at one of the islands, and as a result, you're going to wind up bringing some of the core of that storm the good news here, and there is good news in that with the storm moving so slowly, that wind shear taking its toll, and then the circulation of the islands getting involved, it is quite likely that this system will be in a much weaker state when it approaches land. It's not as if it's accelerating as a Category 3 or a Category 4 hurricane and accelerating in terms of its speed toward the Hawaiian Islands. If it were moving at, say, 15 or 20 miles an hour, I think that there would be big concerns there. But the fact that it's creeping gives the atmosphere more time to attack it with the wind shear and perhaps take the storm apart. So be sure to check the CPHC website, Central Pacific Hurricane Center, for any updates. The next advisory will be coming out at 2 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, and that would be 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, as far as the weather in the eastern United States is concerned, which is what we like to look at front and center, we'll call it home base. It's actually a pretty straightforward pattern that we're in and going to be in, because the trough that is in the east is going to lift out, and gradually it is going to be replaced by a ridge. Now, there's one other shortwave here in the western Great Lakes that comes through Saturday night. So that kind of delays the heat a bit, because it temporarily squashes the ridge. There's not going to be much with that shortwave really, other than clouds, I believe. And then the ridge in the east takes over for next week, and it holds through much of the week. There is a shortwave. This is Tuesday night. You've got some energy in the northern plains and Great Lakes, but you notice it doesn't really dent the flow very much. It doesn't really bring the jet stream from Canada down that far to the south. It just kind of keeps it. If you look at that 591 line, that runs from Cape Cod to New York City to Pittsburgh to about Louisville, and then through to St. Louis. So the air masses coming out of Canada having influence on the weather north of that line, but south of that line, it's hot and humid. And I think that's going to be the case through the middle part of next week for sure, possibly even beyond that. The ridge in the east on the prior run looked to be a bit stronger. This run actually has it at least through next Wednesday as being a bit flatter. The one thing that might keep temperatures from getting too hot for too long is the possibility that we could wind up with a bit of a backdoor cold front that could possibly come through. So other than that, there really isn't too much to speak of as far as the weather is concerned going into the last week of August. Beyond that, I think it's going to be a matter of whether we get the trough to come back into the eastern part of the United States or not. And that, I think, is the bigger question for, say, the first week of September. Meanwhile, here is, just to show you on the surface what's going on. The weather, by the way, very, very quiet. This is the weather map for tonight, but I'm going to switch real fast to the radar, the local radar, the U.S. radar. And let me just make this a bit smaller now so you can see everything that's going on. And there you have it. So the radar is very, very quiet in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states. But again, much like yesterday, we're seeing it again today, that normally you'd see this all peppered with showers and thunderstorms of the scattered variety during the late afternoon or evening this time of year. Nothing. It's bone dry quiet. There's hardly a shower or storm to be found, even in places like New Orleans, for example, where usually every afternoon at about 3 o'clock you get the 3 o'clock thunderstorm. Not happening today. There's some activity going on in Florida along the East Coast and in some of the areas along the West Coast, but that is also scattered in nature. Nothing in the Great Lakes. We've got some downpours in Southwest Missouri, extending into northern Arkansas, and the monsoon is going at it in the southwest, and we've got a little bit of activity going on in the northern plains. But other than that, it remains very, very quiet. And as we move through the GFS here for the overnight, that high moves out to the east. We're still going to have to wait until Sunday to see, I think, a noticeable increase in the humidity. There's enough dry air here to keep that humidity at bay until a weak warm front goes by to our north. And then after that, it's just hot and humid. I think the amount of shower and thunderstorm activity for the most part will be relatively minimal for my area, which is, of course, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, at least through Monday and probably even into Tuesday. How hot it gets, I think, we've got a west. The isobars are certainly implying that there'll be a west or a west-southwest wind here. So if that's the case, if the morning launching pad is good, is high enough, and you don't have a lot of clouds, we certainly could see temperatures get into the range of about 90 to perhaps 94 or 5 in some areas. And of course, the sea breeze is not a factor this time of year. So the wind, except unless you're right on the beach, it's not going to provide any cooling inland. Here is the front that tries to approach next Wednesday. You can see the showers and storms that break out ahead of it. And it does actually make a run for the coast Wednesday night into early Thursday. This was a front that the models didn't do much with, but as we pointed out on the upper air, the jet stream pattern here, perhaps a little bit, it's flatter with the upper ridge, and as a result, it might allow for that front to come on through. So we'll see if that's the case. It could be one of these deals where you see it on, one model run has the ridge stronger, another model run has the ridge weaker. One of the big arguments that some of the models have been having, by the way, is the fact that they can't seem to decide in the longer term if we're going to keep this ridge in the east pretty much for the next 2 weeks, or are we going to go back to the trough in the east. And the model runs have been sort of going back and forth on this idea. The European today, by the way, suggested that the ridge in the east would remain a factor right through the 10-day period, even though it does get a little flat here toward later Wednesday and Thursday of this coming week. It does pop it right back up for Labor Day weekend and actually makes it rather strong. This would suggest that the weather here could be, hot for the Labor Day holiday weekend, if it's correct. And I'm not 100% sold yet that it is. Meanwhile, as far as the Atlantic tropics are concerned, I can tell you that, the Hurricane Center still mentions a wave off the it's coming off the African coast. And, we do see on the models several waves moving out over the next 2 weeks. Models are not really doing very much with those waves. That does not necessarily mean that nothing's going to happen. But on the other hand, if they spun them up, you would perhaps give it a little more interest and a deeper look. The pattern to me in the tropical Atlantic would suggest that activity should start to pick up very soon, particularly with the fact that the Pacific is shutting down. With Lane is out there, and other than that, there's nothing else that's forecast to develop in the next 5 days. So the conditions are gradually looking like they're becoming a little more conducive on the Atlantic side. But as we have been pointing out for weeks now, there hasn't really been, there's been very little, certainly in the major development region, there's been little or nothing, even in the form of some tropical waves. Most of them have been very, very weak, and what we have seen develop, that's been the homegrown stuff. Okay, so let's come to the board. Hey, Johnny Quest, you have got to be enjoying this. You who have been absolutely, I think of everybody that's on here on my YouTube channel, I think you are the champion of rainfall over the last 2 months. So you must be enjoying this weather. Is the water cooler by the Hawaiian Islands to weaken it a bit? Robert Hurley asks, water temperatures around the Hawaiian Islands are around or just over the 80-degree mark. I mean, that's warm enough to certainly sustain it. If it wasn't for the fact of the wind shear, I think you would see this hurricane perhaps not hold on to the extreme strength that it had, but it could very well, very easily have held on. Would hold on as a Category 3 as it approached the Hawaiian Islands, and possibly even a low-grade Category 4, if there's such a thing as a low-grade Category 4. But the shear, I think, is the shear and the interaction. If you want to rank in order of importance in terms of what is going to be the most important factor regarding any weakening, I would say shear is number one, the mountainous terrain number two, and then the water temperature is kind of a weak number three. All models, Israel do have the ridge in the east at least through the middle of next week, and also beyond it. The GFS and the European both want to keep that ridge out in the east for about 10 days, but the strength varies. You do get, it looks like it tries to bring through a couple of cold fronts. Johnny Quest, today the sky was dark blue with a nice breeze, felt like early October, and got down to 47 last night. I know, and that is just, I'm looking forward to the first night where it gets down into the 40s. I could sleep with the window open and a lot of covers on the bed. Great day weather-wise from William Huber. It doesn't get better than this. My area by Rocky Point, Pine Barrens should get to low to mid-50s tonight. Yeah, it absolutely should. It's going to, in some of the Pine Barrens and in inland areas away from the urban centers tonight, it will definitely get down in the lower 50s. Johnny, you're up 3,500 feet. Nice. You probably get a fair, at that elevation, you should probably get a fair amount of snow under most conditions, I would think. But you know what? I don't know your terrain. Obviously, I don't know your terrain. But the 3,500 feet for a snow lover, that certainly can't hurt. The further south you are. And just making sure, resident statistician, making sure I get to everybody. I don't like to leave you out of comments, but if I do miss you, be forgiving. There's a lot going on here with me switching maps around and scrolling up and down on the board. With warnings in place, the Central Pacific Hurricane Center will issue an intermediate advisory every 3 hours and a full advisory every 6 hours. So the next one will be at 2 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time or 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Michelle Kitko, that is correct. Your observation is correct. Historically, the majority of hurricanes do weaken once they reach the Hawaiian Islands, and that is why that there have been so few hurricanes that have made direct hits on the Hawaiian Islands. I've commented many times about the fact that there almost seems to be a nature shield over Hawaii in itself, protecting it, because there have been major hurricanes all around Hawaii. In most years, you do get at least one hurricane that makes you at least think about it a little bit. But the landfalling ones are very rare, and in fact, Aniki in 1992 being the last one, so we're talking 26 years ago, that actually had its origins right in the Central Pacific, south of Hawaii, and then accelerated northeastward over the islands. Unlike Lane and also Hector from a couple of weeks ago, those both started off the coast of Mexico and marched all the way across. And in fact, Hector also then marched across the international date line. That is unusual to see a system start that far out to the east and come all the way across. Usually something gets it along the way, be it wind shear or colder water or something. But in this case, both those storms were tracking far enough south that they avoided the normally colder waters of the Pacific, which actually turn colder once you get north of 20 degrees north. Let's see. Also, statistician Anthony Orr points out that Lane's lowest pressure was 922. You have 929. I believe I saw 922. Or is it 929? Now I'm confused. Either way, it was in the 920s. 2006 Hurricane Cioffi, which became Typhoon Cioffi. The lowest pressure was 915 millibars, the most intense hurricane ever recorded in the Central Pacific. Anthony Orr, he's good. He's really good. He finds all these stats that I used to have at the top of my head. But check on that lowest pressure from Lane, because I believe it got to I believe it got to 922 at the absolute bottom. The 90-degree days, Israel, will be over with when that ridge in the east goes away, or the latter part of September, whichever comes first. Because if you get a ridge position in the latter part of September, 90 it gets tougher and tougher to achieve. I'm just trying to make sure I got everybody's comments. Timothy Veltman placing in order that he wants Columbus to every day to be like today, right through Columbus Day. If only, from your lips to God's ears, Timothy, if it could only be the case. I didn't look at the Canadian, Israel. I don't know if the Canadian has the same idea. It's been fairly consistent in the times I have looked at it over the last couple of days, so I assume that it does. Just trying to get, let's see, who else? Okay, Tamara Truststone, thank you. My son and his family are in Kiehi, K-I-E-H-I. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. We've been spending a lot of time on Hurricane Lane, so we'll update you here. So thank you very much for being Tamara, for being here on my YouTube channel. Captain Charisma, what's that little vortex 5 o'clock to Lane? I did see that on the satellite loop. Let's go back to that. Let's take a look. Because I did notice that there was something spinning out there. And actually, some of the models did have, you see it here. If you see where Lane is, go to the right of Lane, where you're in the number 17. There might be some kind of little low that's out there. Some of the models actually picked up on this. I mean, it's close enough where it would get entrained by the circulation. I'm going to see if I can pull up a visible, because we might actually see if there's a little bit of turning going on. Actually, and look at that, folks. If you look closely, there actually is, it looks like there is a little bit of a low-level circulation here that's sitting out at about 17 north, and the longitude there, I'm thinking, is 150, right in 152. But yeah, there's definitely a good catch there, Captain Charisma. There is something spinning out there, and you see it's actually rotating up and around the hurricane, which is the dominant circulation, kind of what's known as a bit of a Fujiwara effect, where you get two storms that are very close together, and they just start to interact with each other, where one kind of rotates up and around the other as they retain separate identities. Oftentimes what happens is the stronger of the two systems winds up absorbing the weaker one in time, and I would think that if it gets too close, you're going to wind up seeing Lane absorbing the moisture from this circulation that is out to the east. But that's a very interesting development. The other thing is to look at this is if we take a look at the GFS, I'm going to bring the GFS back up for a second, because maybe this might be a bit of a clue here. Hang on, folks. I want to bring back the Central Pacific one. Whoops, wrong geography. There we go. All right, so let's go back to where we are now. Where that, it doesn't really show it here very much. If you want to interpret that the isobar is stretched east of the low center, that could be the GFS's way of showing that circulation. I did know on a couple of runs, I think on one or two runs, it actually popped up a little surface low there that just disappears. But it could be this feature. See if we could see something maybe at a higher level. if there's at least a clue. And, you know, there is a bit of a wind maxima out here, but I don't think that would, you know, support it very much. Yeah, you know, it does kind of pick up on a surface low well to the east of 150, but what we're seeing is sitting at about 152 or 3. But nonetheless, you wonder whether that maybe I'm just going to speculate here openly. Maybe that's the reason why some of those hurricane tracking models have this sudden hook to the right before it turns it back to the left. It could be that feature that's out to the east could exert a bit of a pull on this before it winds up ultimately going to the west. You know, again, that's open speculation on my part, folks. That's not something I'm predicting openly. I'm just saying that, you know, it does seem to be something out there, and sometimes, you know, you could get some odd things happening from these outside, you know, these other forces that are playing around in the atmosphere. I have not had a chance, Israel. I have had my hands full. Let's wait till the weather calms down and then just remind me. And in the meantime, you know, check, do a little Googling and check Rutgers, the climatology office at Rutgers, because they have a lot of records that they keep there, and I don't know how much of that is available online, but if you dig around, I bet you'll be able to find them. Also, you know what? Why don't you shoot a message over to Garden State Weather on Robert Smith there does a great job, and he probably could answer your question a lot better than I can. Robert Smith, or actually certainly probably might be able to answer it if he's not busy faster than I can. Between everything that I'm doing with these live streams, some days I haven't had a chance to sit down. I did get those pictures, Johnny Quest. Are those your shots? I did. They were very good, but I'm wondering if those are your shots. I'd like to give you credit if I share those pictures. You know, so you know, let me know. I don't believe he's live on YouTube. I'm not sure if he is. He might have a YouTube channel, but I don't know. Lane's lowest pressure was 922. Okay. For a change, Anthony, I got you on this one. Usually I'm the one that is mixing things up. All right, Israel, hang on a second. I'll see if I can find if he's got a YouTube channel. Hold on. Garden State Weather. It does not look like he has a. I don't see a YouTube channel. It's Garden State Weather, and his name is Robert Smith. You can find him on Facebook, and I'm sure he's. You could dig him around on Twitter or you know, in anywhere of a bunch of other places that all us weather folks hang out in. So we're all there. All right, folks, we're coming up on 20 minutes before the hour of 7 o'clock Eastern Time, which is 20 minutes before 1 o'clock Hawaii time. Thanks again for being here tonight. Once again, a reminder, you folks watching from Hawaii, all the best to you, and be sure to get official information from the National Weather Service in the Hawaiian Islands and the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, which you can access by going to weather.gov. Always happy to see folks from all over the country, and for that matter, all over the world on my YouTube channel. I get such a thrill out of seeing folks that aren't in my neck of the woods. Remember, consult your local National Weather Service office or the Central Pacific Hurricane Center regarding decisions you may have to make in regards to the threat from Hurricane Lane. Weather model maps that we show here are not to be used for making decisions. And also, we are a participant in the Amazon Services and in the Ebates Associates program. They're affiliate advertising programs designed to provide a means for our channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon or Ebates and their affiliated sites. You shop on Amazon, you get a cash back on Ebates, they throw me back some coin, I get a few cigars, and everybody is happy. All right, 9:15 tonight, the Joe and Joe Weather Show with my colleague Joe Rayo on Facebook. That's at meteorologist Joe Cioffi or at Joe Rayo Weather. And of course, we'll be back. I will try and do a quick update live stream when I get home tonight. The problem is that I've got some kind of issue with my internet signal all of a sudden at my house, and I was having a lot of trouble live streaming. Hopefully, it's resolved itself by the time I get home. I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that. But, I'm not holding my breath. Every time I get something technical that goes wrong, it oftentimes takes me days or even in some cases weeks to figure it out. So we'll see what happens. One last comment here from Timothy Veltman. Tonight is the live taping of the Stormfront Freaks podcast, so I'll be watching over there tonight, and you'll have to catch the replay. All right, buddy. Enjoy. Okay? Have a great evening, everyone. We will hopefully see you later on Facebook, or if not, I see if I can try to upload the show to the YouTube channel. I wasn't able to do it the last couple of nights because of some Facebook technical issue. Technical issues abound everywhere. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you either later or tomorrow.